It's the program this morning on ITV on independent television, and a very good morning to you. Today is Wednesday, the 14th day of August 2019. We are going to be looking at the ongoing national Hajj. You may call it international Hajj because it's something that has to do with most nations of the world gathering in Saudi Arabia, in Mecca to be precise, for the annual Hajj thing. Well, it's a good one to know that Nigeria as a nation sent people there this year, pilgrims. But one bad thing that people don't also want to remember concerning the Hajj is this isn't death. Just this year alone, Nigeria as a nation has recorded about 9 people that are said to have died at the Hajj. And the most recent of it all is Mrs. Folashade Lawal, who is from Lagos State, to be precise, from Oshu, the local government area of Lagos State. And it was reported at about 3 a.m. yesterday morning that she died. Well, I had to go out to actually look for people, if you like, that have been at the Hajj to tell us the experience and what it's like and what may really be responsible for the death that we get to see at the Hajj. And we are so privileged to have Mahmoud Ahmed. He's a Muslim cleric and also a public affairs journalist, a political discussant also for that matter. Mahmoud, welcome to this program this morning on ITV.
Thank you. Good morning, viewers. I greet you. Salah greetings to everybody.
Yeah, and let me say Barakah Salah.
Thank you very much.
All right. Yesterday I called you and you were like telling me that you've been to the Hajj about 3 times in Mecca. Now, what is the experience like at the Hajj?
Well, it's a very, very demanding, physically demanding exercise. And when you consider the climate in Saudi Arabia, it's very hot, very humid, and particularly around this time of the year, as you can even see here. So there is a lot of mental and physical preparation that is required. But the challenge is usually that to achieve a measure of financial security that allows you to go for the Hajj, people would have become at least middle age and so on and so forth. So that is the physical challenge, there's the financial challenge, and then there's also like a mental preparation for the task. Now, to give some background to all of this, Islam is based on 5 principles, the first of which is the belief in one God, the second is prayer, the third is fasting, the fourth is giving alms, and of course the fifth is where it is possible, where it's financially possible, a Muslim should try and go for the Hajj. And the Hajj, the Hajj process is one that requires some kind of mental and physical preparation because it's quite arduous. It's a 7-step process where the beginning of is the circumnavigation of the Kaaba, running between 2 mountain tops, followed by going to Arafat, standing in the plain, throwing literal throwing of stones at the devil, or metaphorical actually, and then completion of the rites by shaving the head. So, and this is spread over a period of about 3 days, and it can be quite demanding. So this is the challenges, the preparation, the level of preparation. I find that the Nigerian pilgrims are not quite adequately physically prepared for the task. They assume it is something that let me be clear in what I'm saying. You cannot overemphasize the fact that it is they need to double up or even triple up on that. They need to get the pilgrim to be aware that it is a very demanding physical exercise. So I went through the commission on the 4 times that I went for Hajj. They did exercises, they did awareness programs. They are not mandatory, so the pilgrims don't usually engage until the last minute.
We also have a new entrant now. Nuruddin Asiloje is an Islamic cleric and also Islamic scholar and a practicing lawyer. So you're welcome to this program this morning on ITV.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Good morning, viewers.
All right. Now, let me come to Ahmed Mahmoud. Now, we're trying to establish the fact that the way people die at the Hajj, and trying to see how prepared, pilgrims are. And we're trying to look at the role of the National Hajj Commission. Can you continue from there?
Yes, if you permit me to extend my condolences to the family of the departed.
Yeah, we're going to go there.
So, and then the preparation, like we were saying before the break in transmission, like I was saying, the Hajj Commission needs to redouble the efforts to impress on intending pilgrims that it's a very arduous physical exercise. Okay. Beyond the financial aspect and the mental preparation, there is the need to impress upon the pilgrims that there is a lot that will be demanded physically from the body. It's possible that maybe they introduce some kind of regime of physical fitness, either of exercises preceding the Hajj, and advise the pilgrims to bring themselves up to a certain condition. I don't know, well, from my own experience, there were no physical medical checks that would guarantee a level of fitness. Okay. And it was, the only requirement was that you could pay for it. So you had elderly people, you had middle-aged people, a whole mix of people. So the only thing that was common was, regardless of your age, you will experience that physical challenge when you go for the Hajj. And the preparation cannot be overemphasized. Okay. So this is one aspect that needs to be properly given the attention that it requires.
All right, Nuruddin, let me welcome you one more time. We, just like what we said, that looking at the Hajj, you've been at the Hajj too. You've been to the Hajj too.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the incident that has to do with death, of pilgrims, and stories. I've not been to the Hajj, but stories here and there that there are times that you have to gather at a certain place, you have to stone, certain objects and all that, and of course it is during that you have every tendency for there to be a stampede. I wanted to share with us your personal experience at the Hajj.
Well, thank you. Basically,
Hajj in itself, like my brother had said, ought to be a mental as well as attitudinal transition from what perhaps represents putridity to that which is immaculate. The implication of this, of course, is that the individual who intends to go to Hajj does not just look at the physical visit to the places of significance that give meaning and dynamism to Hajj. But what the Quran, for example, said was that when you get prepared, which would include physical fitness, it said the best of preparation is for you to have crystallized in your consciousness the consciousness of God the Almighty, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if that is the biggest, they didn't say that is what you take out of Hajj, but it is part of what you have in your kitty when you're going on Hajj. So it will mean that the individual must relate with the issue of Hajj. No such things that will be draped in plenary. By this, all acts of mendacity would have been PGO, if not completely cauterized from the heart of the intending pilgrim. So you find some persons who, when they want to go to Hajj, the information they give, they are economical with the truth. The fellow is diabetic, the fellow is hypertensive, the fellow has all of those maladies that could be, they could experience precipitation once you are confronted with all of those issues that are inevitable when you are participating in Hajj. All of these are kept secret.
Why should an intended pilgrim keep such information secret?
Well, because the understanding of the entire process is ab initio defective. Because there are persons who have not physically gone to Hajj, but because of the genuineness of the intention that they have the reward of one who had actually performed Hajj. And so when you have the medical team who ought to come up with the true health status of those persons who are involved. They are not interested. They are only interested in the ESTA code they get. They are interested in a number of issues other than the primary purpose for which they were engaged.
Is it related with status in the society?
It's not an issue of status, because what religion does for you, of course, is humility. So when you are talking about humility, there will be contradiction when you talk about humility and at the same time, because the whole issue of status is in the domain of imperiousness. So you won't have all of that. So when you find those who should have done this job, they are not doing what they ought to do, so you have all of that challenge. When you talk about the Pilgrim Welfare Board, at the state level, you have what you call the Pilgrim Welfare Board. The operating word is welfare. The operating word is welfare. Of who? The pilgrims. But more often than not, they act as the bosses. You can't challenge them because they owe their appointment not to the pilgrims. They owe their appointment either as a result of political patronage or because there is a potentate king who had nominated to say, this is the fellow who should be. So either here or outside of this place, the pilgrims are on their own. I will tell you most frankly, in all of the states, including Edo, for example, I'll give you one clear example about Edo, and I say this authoritatively. Pilgrims will pay on what is the cost for taking them from Benin, for example, to Lagos. And they will again, part of what they have paid will include what will bring them back. But you know what they do? Those who are the Hajj officials will write to government to say we need logistics. Part of the logistics will be transport cost. And once that money comes, it's pocketed. And once they get to Saudi, the pilgrims are on their own. They move like cows without shepherd. And so, who guides them? Why do you select somebody to say you become the guide? The one who provides guide will be one who had the requisite experience. It will mean that this fellow had participated. If I'm a first-time pilgrim, for example, the likelihood of me not appreciating, because what I read in the book will be different from what you come to experience practically. But you find out that the ones who ought to have provided a guide, once they get there, they are on their own. You won't even find, when they used to be state medical team, you hardly will find the doctors providing the services they ought to render to pilgrims. Today we don't have medical team, you have what is referred to as the national medical team. But you still find a number of states who collect extra code on behalf of nurses and doctors, which they pocket. They get the state to provide all this, to say we have all of these things. So you find there is a whole lot of corruption. If you ever were in Saudi, you find, we had an interaction in 2012 or in 2010 with a Saudi man. The man said, I am stupendously rich. I have hostels for pilgrims, but I do not give to Nigerian pilgrims.
Why?
He said, the reason why I don't give, he said, it's only the Nigerian pilgrim you will find who would get accommodation, the Nigerian officials who will get accommodation for pilgrims. There are no documents that are signed. No documents that are signed that in the event that a pilgrim suffers this, while using your facility, there will be compensation.
Exactly.
He said, I told them I don't do that. I'm already rich. So I'm afraid of God. So a pilgrim will get accommodation for like 10 persons. Nigerian officials will get accommodation for like 10 persons. A room that ordinarily should house 10 persons, they will put double bunk beds there and have 30 or whatever people there. What are they doing? To maximize the profit that they make. All of these go on to impact on the health and the challenges that these persons face. We already know. If, for example, it's just like what you could say of when they tell you that, oh, we know identified black spots. When crimes keep happening in spots that have been identified as black spots, it will mean that those who ought to prevent those crimes from happening are beneficiaries. Okay, so if you know, for example, that during the throwing of stone, there always will be stampede. How come that the bulk of the casualty will be those who came from Nigeria?
Well, let me come to Ahmed. Now, I think we also have to be careful with the way we make allegations here concerning the medical team, because yesterday, while the news was on, we understand that the lady That's Mrs. Fola Shade Lawal, the lady that died yesterday morning from Oshodi in Lagos. Now, Dr. Kana, who is head of the medical team, said that briefing journalists on the activities of medical team of the commission, that's the Nigeria, the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria. Now, does that not presuppose that at least our medical team is up to what they are supposed to do? Because just like unlike what Nuruddin said, trying to allege that at times the medical team does not live up to expectation. Ahmed.
Well, he's speaking from his own personal experience, and I assume that whatever he has narrated are things that he has experienced. But in this particular instance, it's because of the closeness to when the event occurred, and right now, I don't think we can adequately pinpoint what went wrong there until we have a full picture.
Yeah, but some of the stories we are following is that the woman died as a result of stampede, in an attempt to throw the black stone,
yes,
and all that.
Okay, but in that case, since we are talking about a particular incident, it's good that we have something of a reference point.
Okay.
Now, the Islamic faith worldwide is in the range of 1.8 billion. Let's just put them at that. And this Hajj rite is a fundamental requirement of Islam. But the location can only manage to, I think the Hajj figure for this year is about 1.8 million.
Okay.
Which is about 0.1% of the total population. To understand the figures that we are talking about, in 1920, the total population of pilgrims was 50,000. In 1920. Now we are talking about an exponential growth of over 2,000%. Now that same area that was housing 58,000 people is now accommodating 1.8 million people. The numbers are so high that the Hajj Commission in Saudi has to quota the system. It gives each country a certain number of pilgrims that it can accept based on the number of Muslims in that country. So these numbers, and you will not understand what these figures are until you see this mass of people. The whole land mass that we are talking about, where 1.8 million people congregate, I doubt if it's up to the size of Benin. I doubt if it is up to the size. It's not up to a third of Benin. 1.8 million people will congregate at that point for a whole day, after which they will now move to commit to perform the rites,
stones, by the black cars.
And in fairness to the Saudi administration, every year they keep doing their best to modernize these facilities, to increase the amount of access, but they are constrained by a boundary line, because these rites have to be performed within the confines of a boundary line.
Okay.
So they cannot expand it beyond the boundary that is acceptable.
Why?
So the challenge, because those areas are demarcated as the areas where those rites have to be performed.
Okay.
It's like, for example, if you want to go to beachfront, you cannot be going into hinterland. You have to go towards the edge of the beach to bathe and
to experience what it's like.
So that area is confined by a boundary, and the government has tried their best to expand it. They've gone from air-conditioned tent facilities to mobile water tanks to feeding, whatever it is that is possible according to current technology. They introduce to the pilgrims. But there will always be the challenge, because besides being the boundary confines, there's also a time confine. So the pilgrims have to do those rites within that period of time.
Okay.
And so that pressure comes in.
Okay.
So imagine where you have 1.8 million people
doing the same thing there at the same time.
So the best thing that the Saudis do is they also allocate time blocks
according to a certain number of people.
Yes, this may somehow answer the question, unfortunately. So what they do is they allocate time blocks and say, okay, the ones from Asia will do it at such and such time, the ones from Africa will do it at such and such time. So now you find that the Nigerians have their own time band, which they will perform those rites. Unfortunately, our countrymen take some of the bad habits that they have here abroad, and there's impatience, there's lack of concern for the next pilgrim, and all those other things that you should put aside. This leads to some of the casualties that we see.
Okay.
Time and again, you see the Nigerian contingent experiencing unfortunate incidences of stampedes, lack of patience, and all these issues.
Okay. Now, Nuruddin, the concern here is that it appears that the Saudi authority is probably concerned about the tourist aspect, the tourist value, and the tourist benefits that this whole pilgrim voyage brings to the Saudi authority. Because whether we like it or not, as we speak, this period now, the Saudi authority is making big money. Now, what is the sincerity of purpose? What do you think is the sincerity of purpose on the part of the Saudi authority? I mean, year in, year out, the number keep on increasing, and of course, we still have a record of deaths, you know?
Well, before I answer that, the position of the head of the Nigerian medical team still does not, for me, is still a very lame excuse. If we knew someone to be hypertensive, we had a history.
Yeah.
You could tell what was likely going to happen when there is a stampede. And when it comes to Jamra, that is the train of stone, this is the same thing to expect. Someone could do it, could throw stone by proxy, so the fellow didn't need to be there.
Okay. Oh, you can do that?
Yes.
Okay.
As it relates to the economic benefit it brings to Saudi, I'll tell you, regardless of all the defects the Saudi authorities may have, in the area of Hajj, they stand out excellent. I'm still wondering who possibly could have managed the whole issue of Hajj the way the Saudi authority have done. Whatever you think they made from Hajj, over 90% of that same money is invested in Hajj for the comfort of the pilgrims.
Possibly more.
I tell you most frankly, because perhaps this is not the medium, I'm aware. In a particular state, the governor signed for 2 nurses to go to Hajj. The secretary of that state brought the documents to me to say 2 nurses have been approved. The chairman of that state came back to me to say only 1 nurse was approved. They shared the money for 1, even before they left here. Now, when you find out a number of things, the Saudi authorities will tell you, do not pay nobody, because all of these things have been paid for. They are part of the little charges. In order to control, if Saudi was just interested in the economic value, economic benefit, they would throw the gate wide open. They don't care how many persons will die in the process. People are regulated. You, this country, bring X amount of persons. Go to the Nigerian camp in Saudi, whether it's in Muna, whether it's in Arafat, whether it is in Makkah, whether it's in Medina, it is usually the dirtiest.
Nigerian camp.
Oh yes, usually the dirtiest.
And the most unruly.
The most unruly. Because they are not there. Last year, my mother went on Hajj last year. Came back, oh, the food, good enough. She was elderly. The food, how much food does she eat? But they complained about the food. This food business was contracted to those who are, the airline operators, for example, give money to each of the chairman and secretary of the Pilgrim Welfare Board. Why do they give them money? For patronizing us. So why do you think it's from their profit they do all of this? The answer, of course, is no. So you are dealing with a set of persons that the culture of speculation of resources is ingrained in them.
Well, I think we're going to have more time so that we can bring some of these persons on board because it won't be proper for us to make allegations against what they do. We also need to hear from them so that they will give us their own side of the story. Anyway, let's continue. Now, let's look at best safety measures now that we can begin to think of. Because this incident of people dying, just this Hajj alone, 9 Nigerians, have died. And it's really not a palatable experience. Let's start from you.
Well, like I said earlier, and we need to keep on re-emphasizing this, the emphasis must always be on the individual health of the pilgrim. Beyond that, when they are performing these rites, like Elijah has quite honestly pointed out, some of these rites can be performed by proxy. So it is not a strict requirement that they are physically there. So when you know that you have some physical challenges that might make it difficult for you to either escape a tight situation or you will not be able to perform at the pace of yours, you have to picture a multitude of people, for example, moving in one direction. So if they are moving at a certain pace and you are lagging behind, you will be swept away sooner than later. And so all these things are things that you need to be honest with yourself and say, am I going to be able to face this physical challenge?
Let me quickly ask, how many times do you need to throw the stone at the black devil or the black place?
I think it's
is it once or several times?
3 times. There are three locations where you throw. Yes.
Okay.
And then you throw, and then but the Saudi government has expanded it such that you don't even need to come too close to it as used to be the case. And then before they had where you would throw and hit other people and all that, but every time they keep on trying to manage these numbers.
And there's this belief that your ability to really hit the devil, that's the stone that symbolizes the devil now, shows your victory over those we are hearing.
Yes.
That your ability to pick a stone and you aim at the devil shows that you have actually defeated the devil. That probably shows why people are so desperate.
No, well, but even in the act of it, the Saudi government has emphasized very clearly that it's symbolic. So they only encourage you to get the tiniest of pebbles.
Okay.
And they also encourage you to throw in the direction. You don't
not necessarily to get
have
to the
hit.
target.
Throw it in the direction because it's a symbolic exercise.
Okay.
The devil is not physically there. And you are not physically trying to stone him. But it's the symbolism of the act that you are required to fulfill. And so taking a big boulder and trying to aim at the devil is a futile exercise. So the whole of it needs to constantly be people need to be constantly reminded that it's a symbolism, and then you are doing it to fulfill a religious obligation, and once you are there, 90% of the work is already done.
Nuruddin, just like what Ahmed said, that he's been there 3 times, you know. Now, is there any way we can try to structure it in such a way that at least if you go in a lifetime, it's okay? Because the idea of going for more than once, twice, and thrice may probably expose people to some of this death report that we get.
What the Prophet, may Allah be pleased with him, performed Hajj once. That's about what is compulsory. But that is not.
So taking it more than once.
Whoever goes more than that, his intention will be what God will be judging. To reduce that, Saudi Arabia, for example, places a penalty for anyone who had gone to Hajj, who wants to go again within a space of 5 years.
So, okay.
So that is part of the forward thinking of the Saudi authority to address all of these. Majority of the problems that you get that is associated with stampede is either around this Jamra, the train. In 2004, I moved a distance of close to half a pole. My legs were not touching the ground. People had carried me up because of the surge. So I just had to relax that way because I knew if I fell, that is the end. When it comes to throwing the stone, what people do not, which of course enlightenment ought to bring about if you had a board, if you had a Hajj commission, this is basically what it ought to do. But when you throw the stone, it is a covenant you are entering into, which you are saying, whatever relationship I had, it's not like he said there is a physical devil somewhere you are staying. Whatever relationship I had with the devil before now, I'm sequestering myself. I am, destroying that relationship. But the individual does that, he returns to a life of filth. So what was the whole essence
of doing it at all? Yeah.
And in wanting to do that, you don't become self-centered. Because some persons will insist that I must get close to the actual spot.
And hit the target.
That is even the actual spot. Because the actual spot is located in your mind.
In your heart.
That you are simply saying, this day, God, this opportunity you are going to be like Abraham or Ibrahim did. I am saying whatever was the relationship, whatever influence Satan had over me, this is the end of it. We have fought, there is no room for
Now,
reconciliation.
Nuruddin, if you talk like this, don't you think it's also possible for the Saudi authority or for Islam, as it were now, to expunge the act of stoning the devil as it relates to
They are not in a position to do that because it's a fundamental requirement of art.
Yeah, but if we say that the real devil we're talking about now is in our heart, not necessarily...
You see, symbols, for example, help in driving in concrete terms. It's not like when you talk about the Nigerian symbols, they don't represent Nigeria as it were. It doesn't speak of the landmarks, but it communicates a message. And so you could as well say, why not we just stay back here and perform Hajj? If we have the requisite whatever resources we needed to be there. All that the Saudi authority is doing, it has excellently well. It is the human mind. All of the fatigues and all that you find, I will tell you most frankly, it's not you running anybody down. This is our country. If we must fix it, we must speak the truth to ourselves. All the rickety buses you would find carrying pilgrims, finding pilgrims who hang on whatever, are done by Nigerian whatever. And I'll tell you the largest number of pilgrims in every Hajj year come from Indonesia.
Yes.
The largest, they come in their hundreds of thousands. The government is not involved. It is an individual arrangement. So you find people who say for close to 20 years to come, whatever it is government, who are the beneficiaries? The hundreds of millions or billions that is spent, who are the beneficiaries? The beneficiaries more often than not are those who get it as political patronage. You know, the present registrar of JAM, Professor Loide, was in the interim National Hajj Commission. There was one Professor Wando who was the chairman of the interim whatever. When he was asked to speak, he stood up and he said, those of us who are privileged to be in this commission must have the fear of God. While he was still talking, somebody who is still a principal participant as we speak now in the Hajj matter, hit the table and said, don't say that. You are not a politician. Don't call it the work of God. It is national cake. This is my patronage. This is what they gave to me for participating. And they reminded him that Professor Loide was still talking. And they asked Loide to continue to say, I have nothing to say anymore. If somebody that Hajj is not all about God, it is about national cake, what do you ask me to say? And so when such persons are there, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? We had cause to write to some persons activating the Freedom of Information Act to say how many nurses were approved for you to go with to Hajj. How many did you go to? How many whatever seats in the days of Adam Soshomole, he says, I'm not giving seats to people to go to Hajj because I have discovered that those who go are those who can pay for others to go. The present governor came and reversed it. People who can pay for hundreds of people to go are the beneficiaries of it. And which money did he give? Is private money? No, it is state money. So these are the issues. So when you deal with people whose primary interest is not solicitude for the pilgrims, because regardless of this, the exercise of Hajj is taxing.
Well, when you say the present government came to reverse it, which was the Hajj, voyage is not the only religious thing that the state government supports. Those that go to holy pilgrimage.
For both, Oshombole said, I'm not sponsoring. The philosophy behind it was not wicked, was that those who benefit, if, for example, I'm Speaker of House of Assembly, you should appreciate that even if it is my salary alone, I should be able to pay for my wife. I should be able to pay for my sisters to go. My mother went on Hajj. I paid for her to go to Hajj. I am in that kind of position, and I take what came from government to give. Was that the intendment? If that was the intendment of the governor should just say, Mr. Speaker, Mr. House of Assembly member, you take this. That was what Oshomole said, that I have found judges going on Hajj under government sponsorship. And I said that was criminal. That with that kind of money, I could send a poor person's child to school if he can't pay. And again, do not forget, Allah in the Quran says, perform Hajj when you have the capacity to do so.
When you
And
have
so
the
when
capacity,
you don't have
Yes,
the
a personal
capacity,
capacity.
it is not demanded of you. And you could do things to earn you the reward of one who has performed Hajj. And so he said, I wasn't going to do, whether it's for Hajj or for Jerusalem, who are the beneficiaries? If you get to the mosque, if the governor tomorrow identifies who sweeps the mosque on a daily basis, a person who acts out a miserable existence, and so you are so religious, you have not even gone to where the Quran was revealed. I pay for you to go with State Farm. We don't have problems about that. But parvenus, big-time businessmen who get the free ticket to go on Hajj at government expense, that's criminal.
Okay, now one more question for you, Ahmed. Now, still on life safety measures, how can we guarantee this quickly?
We need to keep on emphasizing that there is a lot that needs to be done physically before you embark on the pilgrimage.
Okay.
We need to conduct so that the medical team is staffed as adequately as they should be. Because on the Saudi side, fortunately, when you get to the Saudi side and you are a pilgrim, whatever health challenges you suffer, they would quickly take up and make sure it is rectified. So sometimes there are lapses where you identify your own weakness. For example, the person has diabetes or high blood pressure. You need to manage that yourself. You need to have the authorities know that this is the challenge I'm facing, and then they would advise the best way to go about it. Because when you actually get to Saudi, most of the medical team is open for all the pilgrims, and they have a good medical system. If you come with little ailments or even major
That's put together by the Saudi authorities.
Yes, by the Saudi authorities. They have drugs.
The they give to you is better than the one they take from here.
So you can walk into any of their medical centers as a pilgrim. You have already paid as a pilgrim.
Anyway, we'll just keep our fingers crossed and see how we can extend this discussion more so that we can really find a lasting solution to these reports of deaths here and there. And anyway, we still commiserate and send our heartfelt sympathy to the family of Mrs. Fola Shade Lawal that died yesterday at about 3 a.m. as a result of, a stampede. It was also reported that she was hypertensive before she gave up the ghost. Well, we just hope and pray that all this, just like what we are suggesting here, will really be issues that the authority would take, just take it seriously and see that we just find no deaths anymore. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And Baraka di Salah one more time. Please extend a handshake to Alaji there. Yeah, we'll take a short pause now so that we'll join the other segment, and we're going to be looking at the quest for national unity and national peace, national security, the best options for Nigeria. Please stay tuned.